This is the Breakfast Leadership Podcast. Boundaries or burnout, you make the choice. Here's your host, Michael Levitt. Welcome to another episode of the Breakfast Leadership Podcast. This is Michael Levitt, and you know that our audience and many of you are entrepreneurs and solopreneurs, and you've made that leap. You've leaped from working for somebody, and now you are working for yourself. However, when you're out there on your own, sometimes you forget that there are some certain safety nets that you need to have to protect you, your business, everything involved. Today, I've got Frederic Robinson with us, and he's going to talk about an organization he's with and the services that they provide that helps people like you and me to be able to do the things that we want to do and have the protection we need. So, Frederic, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Michael. I appreciate being asked to be on.
Oh, I appreciate you and everything that you're doing. So you work with an organization called Legal Shield, and I was aware of Legal Shield for quite some time, but we connected a while back and was able to talk, and you connected me with some other people as well to talk, which I always love, enriching my my connections with people and helping each other out in a variety of different ways. So for the audience, tell us how you got involved with Legal Shield. What was your motivation to join up with them, and some of the things that you've learned along the way?
Sure. It's really interesting how it all happened. My background actually is film and television, and I actually own a studio that I rent out to photographers on Vancouver Island. And I was having a situation with the studio, and a client of mine had said, well, you know what, I want to introduce you to someone because I think they might be able to help. And he explained to me what it was, and I thought, well, I don't know how that's going to work, because my experience in the past with lawyers, I'd had a chance to have like a half-hour session with somebody, and I every 5 minutes the lawyer was looking at his watch, and as soon as it got to the half hour, he kind of laid the law down, but saying, if we go any farther, I'm billing you on the 10th of an hour. And I realized at that point, I don't think he'd heard anything that I had said. So when I got introduced to the fellow that was with Legal Shield, once he actually explained what it was, I thought, well, okay, this makes a lot of sense. I signed up. And within 6 months, I went back to him and I said, you need to tell me more about this, because I know so many people that would really have a benefit by having this service simply because of the costs that they had incurred through legal fees. And that's how it all got started. And for me, it's been a real mission to educate people on what you actually can do preventively when it comes to legal matters.
Yeah, it's important to make sure you have that protection so you can be proactive and not reactive, because the last thing an entrepreneur wants to have happen is they finally get their business up and running. It's growing, it's doing things really well, and have the risk of potentially losing a legal matter or having something really go sideways on them where it could cost them their business or even worse. And so, that's something I definitely want to dive into a little bit is, some of the stories that you've seen and heard from people that were struggling with some things and encountered some legal matters, and how if they would have had Legal Shield, it would have protected them from, the challenges that they faced.
Absolutely. And, I've been with Legal Shield now for, it's coming up 5 years. And so the number of stories that I've seen with clients just makes you realize just how valuable this service is for them. And I mean, I can give you a couple of examples right off the bat. There was a fellow who is in the construction industry, and I got introduced to him through a friend of mine, and he said, you really need to have a conversation. I mean, he is so stressed out. And I went to see him, and I could see that, and I could also see that um, he was really stressed because in the construction industry, it's really tough when it comes to collections, right? A lot of companies they're paying out their employees, they're paying out for materials, and now they're waiting for that check to come in, and sometimes it doesn't. And if it's not done in a timely manner, well, now they're still having to pay their employees, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So we got chatting, and through our business plans through Legal Shield, it actually, depending on the size of your company, includes collection letters. So what we did was we took a look at what was owed. We used in the first month what were the collection letters that were needed for that month to collect on the bigger items. Within a year, Legal Shield had been able to collect over $250,000, and none of that money went to the lawyers. It went to him and his business because he's already paying for the service. We also had another example of a small business owner who was about to go into business with a larger company, and they almost signed the contract, but because his wife was, they'd already set up Legal Shield, they're like, you know what, we should really use it. Let's make sure that this is okay. The lawyers reviewed the contract, which again was included in the services, and came back to them and said, do not sign this contract, because what you're not realizing is it's not what's in the contract that's the problem, it's what's not in the contract that's the problem. Which essentially meant that if the larger company they were working with all of a sudden got sued, they would be equal partners, which means they would be sued too. Well, that completely, it changed their viewpoint on the entire experience, and they decided to go another way with their business. But that is, and there's where, if they'd signed it without getting it looked at, they would have been in trouble not knowing, maybe not now, maybe not a year from now, but if something were to happen, they would. And I mean, those are just like two huge examples where having a law firm available to you, so where you can pick up the phone, ask some questions, maybe get a contract reviewed, maybe get a letter written, it really can benefit you, your business, and your overall bottom line.
Yeah, those are some incredible stories with people that, and especially the last example where, they were ready to go and there's a good deal, but then as often is the case, bouncing it off our better half, as I like to say, because they can see things and go, maybe we should have this looked at just to be safe. And guess what? It saved them from potential disaster. It was a preemptive strike basically against what was quite frankly sounds like a bad contract. And in defense of that other organization, they may or may not have had any intent or to try to do something to not be beneficial to the other party. It's just oftentimes in these types of contracts, and believe me, I've seen plenty of them over the years in my career and the different types of organizations that I've been in. Those agreements, and you hit it right on the head. It's what's not in there that can really get you, because those situations do come up. And if you don't have it clearly laid out, then it's up for interpretation. And interpretation is a dangerous field to be playing in when it comes to legal matters.
Completely agree. And you are right. I don't think it was malicious intent on the other party. It's just that that's the way it was written. So they needed to go another way in order to protect themselves. And so it was nice for them to be able to do that. And when you think of the smaller companies, right? Most small companies do not have a retainer set up to hire a law firm to be there for any little thing that comes up. So through the Legal Shield system, it's actually giving people the ability to do that so that they can protect themselves and their businesses in a much more affordable way. And, I guess here's the real thing. I mean, I hear this all the time. Well, I don't need a lawyer. I'm not going to use them that much. Or, I'm not looking to sue anyone. And the truth of the matter is, it isn't about that. And I'll give you the best example I can in terms of understanding this. You think of when the cell phone first came out, you were billed for every minute. You were, each thing you wanted to look up, you're billed for the data. So what do? The cell phone became something you would use for emergencies only. Then all of a sudden they come up with the plans where it's unlimited, for the one fee, you can use them all the time. Well, what's happened? We're using these phones for everything we can use them for. We live on these things. I mean, everybody has one for their business, personal, all the social media. You're using them all the time. Well, you almost need to think of Legal Shield as the same thing. Under the traditional system, yes, you're looking at $200, $300, $400 an hour for a lawyer. So you are very selective of how you use the legal system because you don't want to incur a cost that maybe you didn't need to. Well, with the Legal Shield system, based on this low monthly fee, you now have the unlimited access to them for calls. I mean, you can call in about as many issues as you need to. If they're all different, a different lawyer, depending on what you need, will call you back. But what happens is once somebody starts to use it and starts to realize how easy it is to connect with lawyer, the intimidation factor goes down, and that's a big reason why people don't want to talk to lawyers. When the intimidation factor is gone, well, now you're not really concerned about each call that you make because you've reduced that concern. And now it's easier to use. And now all the little things, and it doesn't matter whether it's a $10 issue or a $1,000 issue, you become comfortable knowing that there's somebody you can call to make sure that you're making the right decisions as you're growing your business. So it really changes your mindset of, it would be great to have it because it doesn't matter what issue it is. I can call in and get a definitive answer as to whether I should proceed with something or not.
Yeah, and that is a safety net that every organization should really have and really embrace. We use advisors and we talk with a variety of different trusted individuals. Now, some of us, tend to spend a little bit too much time using Google as our advisor, which I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. But when it comes to legal matters and agreements, everyone is different. Every contract is different. That's why when I see, different, people say, well, I'll just, use this template that I found online. It's like, yeah, but again, going back to what we said before, it's not going to catch those things that are missing, and you're not a legal expert. I'm not talking about you. I'm talking about the client and the vendor. They may not be legal experts in this, and it's protection for everybody. And whenever I enter into, like for example, in the medical clinic that I support, employment contracts. Our employment contracts have been vetted by HR consultant and a legal firm that works in the employment law space, and it's been updated. And it was quite different than the contracts that were handed out by my predecessors years ago, which, there were a couple of them that basically could have fit on a Post-it note. And there was nothing in there about Employment Standards Act or anything like that. So it was, problematic, to say the least, for the employee and the employer. So it's again, one of those things where when you have something like what Legal Shield offers, it gives you that opportunity to know that you have somebody that can help you and help you sort through the things that you're not familiar with, so you can focus on the things that are important with your business, what you're doing, the services and products that you give to your clients, and everything else.
I completely agree, Michael. And when you're talking to entrepreneurs and people that are just starting their business, what are their interests? Their interests are in what they're making, or what they're creating, what they're doing for their business. They do not have all these other areas that you really need to be looking into. Like, they may not be into the accounting. They may not know enough about that. They may not know enough about HR and, I'm going to hire someone. Well, now it opens up a whole other kettle of fish. Well, you certainly aren't going to be a lawyer if you haven't gone to law school. So to be able to find something that you can have in place while you're growing your business that doesn't cost you too much is absolutely essential. Because in order to grow your business properly, you need to focus on what makes you you, what makes you unique, your product, your service. That's what you've built your business around. Let a team of other people who actually have the experience in whatever area you're looking at be able to deal with the other things so that you can keep focusing on your business.
And that's, again, one of those things where I see so many entrepreneurs just spinning out of control because they're trying to do all of these things. They're trying to be an accountant. They're trying to be a lawyer. They're trying to be a consultant. They're trying to be a business person. They're trying to be the janitor. They're trying to do all of these things, and they're spreading themselves very, very thin. And as you know, I talk about boundaries and burnout a lot, and it's a concern of mine as we are in this space where it's easier to be an entrepreneur than it's ever been before, as far as I'm concerned, with the online, or online access, and with all of the things that we can do. We can have clients from across the planet. It just makes things so much easier for us. But we also need to spend more of our time working in our business, working on our business, not in our business. And many of us spend so much time working in the business that we don't give ourselves enough time to be able to grow it, expand it, and do the things that we wanted to do, because we're trying to play attorney, and we're downloading a quick template and say, here, this is good enough. It's like, no, that's going to make things really problematic for you and for everybody else.
I completely agree. And here's another story for you, because I had a client that saw the value, but was still not really sure when he would call. And he ended up having, we were talking to him about his logo, and he liked it. And I was asking whether he'd got it checked, and he goes, well, no, I think it'll be good. This is going to work for me. And I thought, okay. Well, months go by, and he contacts me in a bit of a panic, and he says, Frederic, I just got a letter from this organization, and they're saying that my logo's too close to theirs. So what do I do? And I said, well, I can easily tell you what you do. Pick up the phone and call the law firm. You have Legal Shield. And he's like, oh, right. I really should start using this. I said, yes. Well, this is probably the perfect time to, because you're in a situation that could be, turn into something much bigger. So he phones. Well, after having multiple conversations with the lawyer, letting them check out the letter, so he basically sent it over, let them review it, they were able to make enough changes, or suggest, I should say, enough changes to the logo that it wouldn't actually go any farther. But what came out of that was, he said to me, he goes, Frederic, now I understand why you kept telling me to call, and why you were saying this was the correct thing for the business. Because now I actually don't mind calling in. And after having this experience, I'm calling him in for whatever decision I make. But his mind now realizes that, why make a decision on your own if you don't 100% know what the answer could be? If he can phone in, have a lawyer actually tell him what might be concerns coming up, or how to deal with something that, and turn it into something that won't cause him concern, that just takes the stress off his plate. Because he was certainly stressed then, and he didn't have to if he'd done this preventatively and actually asked before he started sending out the original, or his original artwork for the logo.
A funny story, and I won't name the organization that I was part of, but they went through, although if somebody's connected on LinkedIn, they could probably figure out who it is. But anyway, when I was there, we went through a rebranding, and we were going to change the name of our organization. And we hired an outside organization to help us with the branding and the rebranding, and come up with ideas and names and things like that. So and I kid you not, and this organization actually came up with this name that we could rebrand ourselves with. And they came up with the name Coach. Now, I can think of at least 2 organizations that have that name. There's a bus line, and then there's a very expensive purse line. Both of those entities would have a much larger legal budget than the organization that I was working with had.
Yes.
And that name came across, and I'm like, how in the world can we use that name? We can't. It's not even it's a non-starter. So the CEO of the organization, was in complete agreement on that and went back and, tore the branding company a new one. It's like, you're going to have to become a little bit more original than this, because before you send us anything, do like what you had, mentioned a little bit earlier about, maybe sniff around and see if this logo looks like anything, because if it mimics any famous organization, whether it's the size of the logo, how it looks, if it's got a swoosh in it, or has a certain type of cursive that's on a red branded soft drink, or anything like that, it's like you're going to get in trouble really, really quick. So yes, I know there's so many logos and things like that, but people can be creative and they can come up with something that's not going to violate anybody's standards. But I mean, that's another great example that probably people wouldn't even be thinking about. A lot of times they think legal, they think, okay, it's a customer client contract, and maybe a lease review if they're renting a physical space. But other than that, no one else thinks about anything that would be involved with the legal stuff. So what are some other things that Legal Shield can do to help protect entrepreneurs and solopreneurs?
Well, one of the big things is really the unlimited questions and matters around your business, because if you are calling in about each little thing that's coming up, and you're getting the advice and help you need to take, to go to the next step, that is absolutely key. And I mean, they will work with other matters too, like they'll do designated consultations, which is interesting, which is if it's something of a much more detailed nature where the lawyers have to do a lot more work, such as like the patents and copyrights, as we kind of were talking about. And one of the big things is the contracts. They will review contracts up to 15 pages in length. Well, that's a pretty sizable contract. So let's say you're going to hire someone, or like you mentioned a minute ago, Michael, with the employee manuals. I mean, get them checked out. Make sure that they're working for you, but they're also working for your employee, and you're not going to put yourself into a bind. And I mean, the document reviews to me seems so key. For me, I give you an example. I was going to do some work with another company, and I had to sign an NDA agreement, but I didn't know who they were yet. And I thought, well, okay, I'm going to send this off. I sent it off to the law firm. They came back to me and said, Frederic, don't worry about it. Like, there's going to be other things that are going to come down, and you're going to have to sign those. But right now, this document, go ahead and sign it, because there's nothing in this that brings us any concern. And I remember when I started putting my signature on the paper, and I thought, this is the first time that I have been able to sign something with 100% certainty that there's nothing in it that's going to come back at me. And to my mind, that was vitally important, because now anytime something like this comes up again, I'm going to shoot the documents over to the law firm without even giving it a second thought. So I think that is key. That is absolutely key. And then, let's just say you were in a situation that is a much bigger situation, and it's going to cost you a bundle. Let's say for whatever reason, your business has crossed the line, you're in a lawsuit situation. You are then obviously in a situation that you would absolutely need a lawyer. Well, going through Legal Shield, you automatically get a minimum 25% discount off their services, which means if you were in a situation that was going to cost you $10,000 to fix, well, now it's only going to cost you $7,500. And considering it's such a big it's a big deal, it's going to cost you money anyway. Wouldn't you want a discount on that, right? I mean, there's definitely other areas that Legal Shield can help. But the key thing is to be using them right off the bat, so that you're basically doing a preventive approach rather than a reactive approach. And I think for most of us, we only think of lawyers from a reactive approach thinking, and we need to change that, and let's go into preventive so that we don't ever get into situations that are going to cost us a lot of money.
And that's the big thing, because again, many of the solopreneurs and entrepreneurs, one lawsuit could close their business down. And the fact that, even, with the discount, it's good. And also it can help mitigate things, because otherwise, they're on the hook for all of that. And it really, really creates some challenges for them both now and in the future. And oftentimes too, people are, concerned that this could potentially happen. So again, I look at this as, insurance. People wouldn't go into, business without having some type of insurance plan. People wouldn't have the challenges of, the different things that they could be facing, like auto insurance. You wouldn't drive a car without auto insurance, or at least I hope you wouldn't.
Yes.
In most places, it's against the law. So, go get the insurance. There's ways to get it, even if you're having difficulty. But yeah, you wouldn't go anywhere without, having some protection and coverage. And the fact that, the service exists, it's a no-brainer for organizations to invest in this type of stuff, because when they do, again, it protects them, and it's like, here, bounce things off. And I know you mentioned, like the 15-page contract review. Hopefully you don't have to have a contract that's more than 15 pages. If you do, congratulations, because you've got a complex business offering, and make sure you charge accordingly. But it's, again, one of those things where it's an awesome service that it just protects you and everybody involved.
Absolutely. And here's maybe one of the biggest keys to this whole system. The way Legal Shield worked, and we've been around for 45 years, we've been in Canada for 19 years, they have created a system of proprietary law firms across North America. Now in Canada, we're in BC, Alberta, Manitoba, and Ontario, but we are in all 50 states and more to come. But because it's this proprietary system, it means that as a Legal Shield member, you become one of the top clients of one of the top firms in whichever state or province you're in, which means that you are getting top talent looking at your legal matters for what you're paying. And to top that off, let's say your business, let's say we're up in here in Canada. Let's say you have a situation where you've got some contracts coming in from the U.S. because one of your vendor partners is in the U.S. Well, we have access to those law firms in whatever state, which means that you're part of the system. It's not just local. It's not just provincial. It's not just the particular state that you're in. You will have access to the other law firms as well. So that is key as well, because you never know. I mean, if you're dealing with a vendor, let's say in Florida, and their contract is quite different, well, obviously a lawyer from Florida needs to review that, right? So you end up having access to the entire system, which can be very, very helpful.
And that's a selling point just on its own. And just to have access to all the things that are there is crucial. And I highly recommend, because entrepreneurs that listen to the show, are definitely in North America for sure. So all 50 states and Canada as well. So that's the beautiful thing about it. And they've been around a long time. I remember when I was in the States 30 years ago, I was familiar with Legal Shield. So it's not a new organization to me, so you don't have to worry about it being, an internet pop-up type of thing. No, these folks have been around longer than we've had internet access. So they're a trusted, validated organization that has done some incredible work for so many people, and has, helped basically protect organizations and individuals and make sure that they can focus on keeping their dreams and reality sticking around. So this has been very awesome information. And again, I really encourage people to reach out and find out more about Legal Shield and all that. So what's the best way for our guests to get a hold of you, Frederic?
The best way is either through phone. So my phone number, 1-250-616-990. Or I can be emailed at Frederic, Frederic, empowerpeoplefirst.com. And then, of course, my website. And, there's a lot of information on there, but there's a lot of questions that often come up that, you really want somebody to be able to go over that with you. And I definitely pride myself on the fact that when I'm working with my clients, they're my clients for life, which means when there's questions that come up, I'm certainly there to help them or help them even with connecting with the law firm if there's other concerns. So my website, empowerpeoplefirst.com.
And listeners will have all of that contact information in the show notes, so you can definitely reach out and deal with Frederic, because he's trusted, by me, and we've connected and we've had conversations, and I value his work, and he deeply cares about people and wanting to make sure that everyone is protected in their business. So, Frederic, thank you so much for being on the show today. I really appreciate you and all the work that you're doing.
Thank you so much for having me, Michael. It was fantastic. Wonderful.
Thank you. And until next time, everybody, be well.
Hey, it's Michael again. Thank you for listening to the podcast. I really appreciate it. If you're like many people, you're dealing with some significant stress and possibly approaching burnout. I know how you feel. In 2009, my burnout led to a year of worst-case scenarios. I do not want that to happen to you. If you go to breakfastleadership.com, you can register for a free webinar on burnout prevention, as well as get a free checklist to have successful mornings. Start off each day the right way. Again, that's at breakfastleadership.com. Also, since you are a loyal podcast listener, I'm asking you to like, rate, and review my podcast on iTunes. I look at all the reviews and appreciate your comments, and it helps other potential listeners discover the content I have on the show. I appreciate you, and thanks again for listening.
This podcast is a part of the C-Suite Radio Network. For more top business podcasts, visit c-suiteradio.com.